Hello, this is Lizzie, and today I'm talking about hypermasculinity. When does the homosocial start to look homosexual? And I'm doing this in regards to anime and manga. Obviously, I haven't seen every anime and read every manga out there, but I'll be using specific examples that I have been watching. So first I thought I'd start with defining some terms. Hypermasculinity is a psychological term for the exaggeration of male stereotypical behavior, such as an emphasis on physical strength, aggression, and sexuality. Homosocial is relating to social interaction between members of the same sex, typically men. In sociology, homosexuality means same-sex relationships that are not of a romantic or sexual nature, such as friendship or mentorship. Homosexual is sexual attraction to people of one's own sex. Homosexuality is romantic attraction, sexual attraction, or sexual behavior between members of the same sex or gender. As a sexual orientation, homosexuality is an enduring pattern of emotional, romantic, and/or sexual attractions to people of the same sex. So what makes a hypermasculine anime character? These are typically your very masculine characters with a focus on strength and endurance. Their personalities are very much tied into their masculine nature and are martial artists, warriors, and fighters. They are muscular in build and are opposite in appearance to the Bishonen effeminate counterparts. Their very way of life is tied into their masculine appearance, normally focused more on fighting, training, and getting stronger. They can also be the hardened warriors, the soldiers that seek perfection and live for their mission, rather than putting stock in romance or family. They are your Gokus from Dragon Ball, Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist, or Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star. Now, while Goku does have a family, for anyone who has watched the series, he definitely tends to put his priorities in fighting and getting stronger, rather than being around for his wife and kids. These characters turn up predominantly in shonen anime and manga. Not that you can't find them in other genres such as seinen. So, before going on to my main examples, I wanted to talk about sports anime and manga. And while its characters fall mainly into a more realistic body type that is more in line with the sport they are playing, it is also a genre that very much lends itself to homosociality. Very much a genre that lends itself to homosociality, being read as homosexual. Now, I think many a sports anime is interpreted via the gaze of the audience, and what is being read into it depends on whether it's from the female gaze, a male gaze, or a queer gaze. I fall into female and queer, and know that what I am seeing in certain sports anime is very different to what my husband sees. Take Kuroko no Basket. My husband sees a sports anime about team spirit, triumph against all odds, and the rise of the underdogs. While I see this too, I also see romance and sexual desire between characters, and very much think that a lot of the characters are dating. So these male bonds of friendship soon begin to look like bonds of love, and I for one have a fair few ships from that series. In truth, there isn't many sports anime out there that I don't have ships. Prince of Tennis was my biggest one, with Tezuka Fuji and Oshi and Eiji, and goodness, so many ships I can't even begin to like say them all. Then I had Haikyuu, Yorimushi Pedal, and All Out, all top series for me. I also know that a lot of merchandise for sports anime is targeted at girls, and they really play on the female gaze to promote and commercialize these series. Now, while there are sports animes that cater for a more female gaze, such as Yuri on Ice, Free, and Prince of Stride, I found I was more drawn to those that weren't. Two of my favourite recent animes are All Out and Hinamura Sumo. When All Out first aired, I called it Rugby Bums, as the marketing seemed to really know how to target female viewers. But was very obvious that it had a diverse cast of bodies and focused on the tropes such as an underdog team, a player too short to compete, the past trauma of the school's team. But it also focused on the ideas of working as a team, forming bonds, practice and training being important, but also knowing where your weaknesses are and also the difficulties faced by teenage boys on a team, such as financial difficulty. It was one of the first animes that ever discussed how not everybody on the team has the same financial circumstances, and those from lower earning families might not be able to afford things like going on the training camps because they just don't have that kind of money. So it was really quite eye opening and quite lovely to see it tackling such issues. But the fact remains, it also has some very strong male bonding and a character who, despite being a tall and athletic boy, was a soft, gentle giant. It was so easy to start reading certain characters as queer, as well as certain relationships. There were just such deep, loving bonds between these males, and coupled with the fact they didn't show any interest in the female characters, this also helped. I, for one, love the pairing of Sumiyaki and Miyuki. They're old friends, they come back to fight on rival teams, but they're always hugging and blushing. Also, Oharano is the super effeminate one who always has cocked hips and looks beautiful whenever he's doing his rugby passes. When you get a series like Hinamuro Sumo, which has the two most manly endings I've ever seen, but the second opening theme song is called Be the Naked. The fact that they put Bishonen heads on sumo bodies so it still has appeal to the female viewers is both amusing but also somehow works. Again, it has its tropes of the underdog and the short character, but I still shed a tear when they lost a fight. Sports anime is very emotional, and these big masculine males with special moves like the 100,000 demon drop, hugging and crying and supporting each other just makes me know how much they love each other. But it's easy to read homosocial bonds as romance when presented in this manner. What of more traditional shonen? What about a series like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where not only do we have hyper-masculine bodies, a focus on strength and fighting, but also a vivid fashion sense and a passion for posing and voguing. I swear with each passing season, JoJo's looks more queer to me, especially Golden Wind. Again, we have a story of triumph over adversity, a focus on the bonds between men, very little female interaction, and all while looking fabulous. It's no secret that the creator of the manga, Hirohiko Araki, was very influenced by the time period he wrote the manga in, the late 80s. He drew from 80s culture, European designers, and fashion, taking inspiration from Western fashion magazines such as Vogue when designing his characters and the way they posed. But often when watching the anime, the use of posing and unique fashion of the characters makes them seem more queer-coded. And while there are some actual queer characters in the show, there are others that aren't, yet have such flamboyant natures it's hard to read them as straight. The JoJo poses, for one, are not for frightening or for intimidating. They are often used to show a character's emotion. The deeper the feelings on display, the more dynamic and flamboyant a pose. Rather than show the typical tough guy exterior, they instead allow their emotions to show on the surface and give off a sense of drama through the posing of their bodies. For such masculine bodies to be so willing to address their emotional complexities feels so different from how macho men have traditionally been depicted. What makes the queer coding even more apparent is the sexualization of the poses. The men are drawn with all their masculine features proudly on display. Their physical perfection and abundant muscles cannot be denied. But often they are posed in a more feminine way, inviting you to gaze on them, to look at them with desire. They invite not only the female gaze, but by taking their masculinity and posing them as if they were a female body, they also invite the male gaze and thus create a more homoerotic experience. The fashion in JoJo's is also so very important, as most characters reject the binary depiction of clothing that the modern world has placed on how we dress. In our society, who gets to wear what has been forced upon us, and those that reject this and choose to go against the mainstream conformity get labelled queer. Men who dress flamboyantly or even sexily are seen as feminine and therefore automatically queer. This explains why so much of JoJo's fashions looks queer, but really the characters just don't conform to modern binary fashion trends. The universe of JoJo's has no such mainstream conformity. It exists in a place without assigning gender and sexuality to clothes. I read a great article about this that said, The men dress so boldly and inescapably unique simply because JoJo's reconfiguration of public space permits them to. There are no hegemonic, institutional, or industrial powers that say they can't wear like a shirt filled with holes and a necktie looped underneath. Instead, they say the opposite. When there's nothing to stop you from dressing this way, of course people are going to start dressing this way. With these factors, it's not so hard to read homosexuality in a series such as JoJo, but another series I want to champion is that of Golden Kamuy. When I first started watching Golden Kamuy, I would never have expected it to be queer-coded as it became. It started out as an action-adventure survival anime with central mystery and a more male-dominant cast. The men are all very masculine, not just because of their battle-hardened and muscular bodies, but because they were all warriors, soldiers, and fighters. Though the war had ended, they hadn't lost their fighting spirit and desire to win and survive. I had not expected to see canonically queer characters or the homoeroticizing of the male characters. As the series goes on, it becomes more apparent that Lieutenant Tsurumi is gay, as he pretty much seduces his men with his charisma and charm. There is something about him that just leads young men to follow him unwaveringly, and with an unyielding passion bordering on obsession. This is first encountered with Edogai-kun, who is a character that came out of left field. Edogai-kun turns out to be a grave robber who makes clothes out of his victim's skin. If you're wondering how this translates to a queer character, or indeed a queer relationship, well, his fashion show was a real eye-opener. The series continues, and more young attractive men with an air of unhingedness about them all follow and clamber for Tsurumi's attention. Tsurumi himself wasn't coded queer. He was clever and tough. He was a seasoned soldier and knows how to inspire and lead his men as a symbol of strength, and very much a flatterer, and as revealed also a seducer of men. But let's step away from Tsurumi and look at the rest of the cast. All muscular men, they are travelling together, they fight and betray, they deepen their respect with each other and learn to work together. Yes, there is room to interpret these male bonds as something more, as the story is very much of a homo-social group becoming closer, but the writer didn't want to leave much to the imagination, and also included scenes such as the otter meat stew. Here things get very homoerotic, as cooking otter meat apparently releases aphrodisiacs, and while trying to survive a night in a small room, the men all start feeling the pressure. Not only does the creator start drawing them more sexually and more feminized, the men start noticing how attractive their comrades are. Soon they can't handle it anymore and decide to strip and play sumo. We are delighted to a very homoerotic scene of big muscular men wrestling each other with sound effects I normally hear in yaoi. The creator, Noda Satoru, of the series himself addressed this in an interview when he was asked, "What is the point in Golden Kamuy that you want readers to pay attention to?" The beautiful nudity of men. I want to keep drawing the naked bodies of men, be they pot-bellied or with thick chest hair. It's clear that he himself wants us to look at these bodies, to appreciate male bodies and to feel desire towards the male characters. Again, we go back to why they look queer, and that is because despite being hyper-masculine, they are posed and put in situations we have conditioned to read as feminine. The characters themselves don't care how they look. They don't have shame, and instead relish in how they appear on the outside and how they interact with each other. One male character chases Sugimoto about with a very obvious erection, flush-faced, exclaiming how turned on he is by Sugimoto, as he believes that he is the only one that will be able to kill him. When you have characters in a world not constrained by mainstream, often Western binary coding, then you get far more queer-coded characters and more hyper-masculine characters not afraid to be themselves and more free with their desires and can express themselves without stigma or shame. I also have links to all the clips if you want to check out some of these shows. They are very good. Golden Kamuy is an amazing period set action adventure anime just set after the Japan-Russian War, and it's about various factions trying to hunt down this map that's apparently meant to lead to a hidden stash of gold. But the map is on ex-soldiers and on prisoners, and it's tattooed on their skin, so they have to go and find these people either befriend them or skin them to try and put the puzzles together. Not exactly what you'd think of something that turned out to be so queer coded with so many like queer characters, but absolutely amazing. Hinamaru Sumo is obviously about a high school sumo team, them kind of learning about the arts. That's very much starting on the like lowest run and learning more about the art of sumo, learning about working as a team, facing adversity. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is action, adventure, powers. It's just excellent, silly fun with some of the most fabulous like clothing and beautiful characters I've ever seen. All Out is an amazing rugby anime that came out about the same time as Yuri on Ice. So a lot of people kind of didn't notice it, but it's got some amazing like just like build up of bonds and that kind of feeling you get when you watch an anime and thinking, are they going to win the competition? And also, the guys are gorgeous, and they do like to put their wonderful rear ends on all the posters because, well, they're very defined, attractive young men. All great series, all definitely worth checking out. And if you want to know anything more about me myself, as you can see, I've got lots of social media. I art, I write, I ramble. If you like homoerotic paranormal romance, please check out my book. It's on Amazon currently. And I hope you enjoyed this talk. For now, this is me saying bye-bye.